Number 3, Oklahoma held off Nebraska 23-16 at home. This game was scheduled to celebrate the 1971 game of the century featuring number 1 Nebraska and number 2 Oklahoma. But the buildup didn't feel like it was going to go anything like, the game of the century. A game that really Oklahoma was thought to be so good and Nebraska was thought to be so very bad that we all just kind of pushed it off to the side. Just look at Nebraska's lone loss to an Illinois team who lost to Maryland, Virginia, and Texas San Antonio. Illinois ain't very good, and we all thought that, a team that lost to the Illini can't be very good either. I asked the folks on Twitter what the final score would be of OU Nebraska. I got answers like this one from Chad Foster, who said 52-14. Frost gets fired by Monday. Yeah, dog. And Luke Oakman, who said 42-14 at half, and Oklahoma eases up and wins 59-24. All right, then we get St. Berg, who said, if it's close in the second half, I lose all faith in OU. Well, Berg is in search of a new religion because after all that, it was 7-3 at half in a game we thought OU would lead 73-0 at half, and it was the first time that OU was held under 10 points in the first half since it was tied with Ohio State 3-3 at halftime in 2017. It also was the first time the Sooners were held to single digits in the first half at Owen Field since being held to 6 points by Notre Dame in 2012. I was covering that game, and James Harden was traded from the Thunder to the Rockets the same night. Then Barry Switzer, the king around here, came through bucking shots, which is the most Oklahoma thing ever. Speaking of bucking shots, we've learned that Spencer Rattler is not the gunslinger Baker Mayfield was in 2017. He's more like Baker was in 2015. He's talented. He's just not good, but he has the potential to be great. Still, OU fans are screaming for Caleb Williams to start at quarterback. Like I say, death, taxes, and Oklahoma fans asking to see the true freshman quarterback in a tight game. Miss me with that. But QB ain't Oklahoma's problem. Finishing games is its problem. It has a second half problem against teams with a pulse. In 2020, OU led K-State 21-7 at half and lost that game 38-35. In the same year, the Sooners led Iowa State 17-6 at half and lost 37-30. They led Iowa State 24-7 at half in the Big 12 title game last year and barely held on 27-24. This season, they led Tulane 37-14 and barely held on 40-35. And then there's Nebraska today. Now, if Pat Field, who is from Tulsa, and Tulsa boys absolutely smack, didn't run back that blocked extra point attempt for 2, we're looking not at a one-score game, but a game Nebraska could have won with its final possession, just like Tulane 2 weeks ago. And if DJ Graham hadn't made the most acrobatic INT of the century, get it? INT of this? No, never mind. OU might have lost that game altogether, but it didn't. And you know what I think September is all about? It's about surviving and advancing. At 3-0, the Sooners did just that. And with that in mind, Adrian Martinez had just 34 yards rushing, even if he did throw for 289, and was sacked 5 times. All this in a game where Oklahoma didn't turn the ball over and Nebraska deliberately muddied up and slowed down the game. It wasn't pretty, and no one wants to hear it because Nebraska isn't supposed to be a good team because they lost to Illinois, but they're decent. This win was also Oklahoma's 11th straight, tied for the second longest streak in the country with Texas A&M. Meanwhile, Nebraska, baby, now you know you're good enough to play with the number 3 team in the country. Somehow, I think Husker fans will feel they should have won this game. And I don't think that they're going to feel any better about losing it, knowing that. All right, number 1 Alabama defeated number 11 Florida 31-29 in the Swamp. See, I wanted to see how much Icarus Florida has in it. For those who slept during their Greek mythology elective, Icarus and Daedalus attempted to escape from the Isle of Crete with wings Daddy Daedalus created from a flock of feathers and some wave cap wax. Daddy Daedalus warned Idiot Icarus not to be complacent nor arrogant. He told Idiot Icarus not to fly too high or too low, lest the saltwater spray jam his wings with water or the sun cook his wings like a Caesar fade wrapped under a do-rag for a week straight. But Idiot Icarus ignored Daddy Daedalus and flew right up next to the sun and got cooked through to the white meat. Turns out, Florida doesn't melt in the sun, which is great because they play in Florida, aka the hot zone. And that joke has viral layers. Alabama rolled to a 21-3 lead in the first quarter, but Todd Grantham's defense tightened up, particularly against the run, and Dan Mullen's offense got busy running against a Pete Golden defense on the strength of 245 rush yards. Florida outgained Alabama in total yards, 439 to 324. Emory Jones solidified his place as starting quarterback with 278 total yards with a rushing TD and INT and only 2 sacks allowed. But Tide quarterback Bryce Young was just a touch better statistically, even if at times it feels like Jones outplayed Young. Young completed 22 of 35 for 240 yards, 3 tutties to improve his TD to INT ratio to 10-0, while passing for at least 227 yards in each of Alabama's 3 games. But this narrow 2-point tie victory showed how the 2021 detergent might be stained. And it starts with having talent to run with Thanos' Titans of Tuscaloosa. Thanos being Nick Saban, you get it. There are 1,696 men on 32 NFL 53-man rosters. 54 of those players played at Alabama. This is the 4th consecutive year that Alabama has had more players in the league than any other college program, but 5 of the top 20 programs with alumni in the NFL are on Alabama's schedule. Put another way, 648 players, or 38% of the NFL, comes from 20 schools, and Alabama has to play against a quarter of them. Indeed, 32 of the NFL's players played their college ball at Florida, for instance. This is why we continue to say the best college football in the sport is played in the SEC and the SEC West in particular. According to the recruiting rankings to talent composite, Alabama has or will play 5 of the 15 most talented teams in the entire country this year. In this game against Florida, there were a total of 20 5-stars on rosters, which means there are at least 20 projected first-rounders at the Swamp today, even if 14 of them play at Alabama. And with that in mind, the bottom line remains the same. Saban is 11-0 all-time against Mullen, and the Tide have won 32 straight against SEC East opponents dating back 11 years. But the Tide still have ranked opponents Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Arkansas, and Auburn left, let alone a talented LSU and a feisty Mississippi State. Alabama might be the best team in America yet again, but that doesn't mean they're not going to have to earn it. But I ain't picking against them. I mean, I can't. Have you seen them? Have you seen my pick, Oklahoma? Yes, you have. Number 22, Auburn lost to number 10, Penn State, 28-20. This was the first time Auburn traveled to the Big Ten to play a Big Ten school since 1931, and it might be another 90 years before they decide to do it again. Look here, James Franklin and the Penn State Nittany Lions become just the 3rd team in college football this year to notch not 1, but 2 top 25 victories this year. Iowa and Alabama, of course, are the other 2. This also puts at issue whether or not the Big Ten can play with the SEC. Because before the season started, we would have said Penn State, Auburn, that's a pretty even matchup. Turns out in Happy Valley, no. You ain't wanting none of these Lions, Tigers. You just got smacked. And James Franklin was out there just getting it in, man. He was having such a good time. And come October 9th, we get to find out if Penn State got what it takes to come after the Ohio State Buckeyes. Oh my God. Like, I'm so excited that we seem to have a challenger to Ohio State because, well, Ohio State has to win the Big Ten title in a way that, We might have forgiven a loss here or there, but the Big Ten East is also the second best division in all of football. So I'm really excited to see whether or not Ohio State can keep its momentum because, as you'll note today, number 9 Ohio State dispatched Tulsa 41-20. But the day belonged to true freshman tailback Travion Henderson. He rushed for 277 yards and 3 tutties on just 23 rushes against my alma mater. That's 11.7 yards per rush according to any calculator. Means legendary Buckeye tailback Archie Griffin's true freshman rushing record of 239 yards in a single game set 50 years ago belongs to Henderson. As does, the record for the third most rush yards in a single game by a Buckeye tailback. Look, RB1 in Columbus is number 32 in your programs. And his opponents have 3 years left of this. Good luck. Watching some of his breakneck runs this afternoon, I thought if you changed his colors from scarlet and gray to cardinal and gold, you might see Reggie Bush. Speaking of Reggie, big news, Brady Quinn asked Coach Switzer a good question.
Coach, how many times would you have given Reggie Bush the ball if you had him back?
I don't know if Reggie could play for us.
Hey, Coach, listen. It ain't where you from. It's what you made of. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, you got a lot of kids out of California. Reggie, you have to block. I
don't like blocking, Coach. Coach, I don't like blocking.
You got to go block.
Just give me the ball in my hands. Let me go score the points for you.
Coach Switzer got a showstopper for everybody. Reg, it ain't just you, dog. It ain't just you. The Ohio State secondary cannot say the same, though. It is a hot mess. TU quarterback Davis Brin completed 32 of 55 passes for 444 yards with 2 TDs and 2 picks against the Buckeye secondary. This is the second consecutive game where Kerry Combs' defense has allowed at least 500 yards of offense. And Minnesota put up 495 in the season opener. Means Ohio State is giving up 500 plus yards of offense a game. It's a yikes from me, dog. The Buckeyes ostensibly have just one more game to figure things out against Akron next week before they start to play teams that look a lot like Minnesota and Oregon again in a quest to defend their Big Ten title. Shout out to my nephew, Owen Ostrowski, who plays defensive line at Tulsa and made the travel squad to Columbus as a true freshman. Love you, nephew. Wish it would have gone a little bit better for you. Number 14, Va Tech at West Virginia. And yes, West Virginia laid the smackdown on the Hokies. West Virginia knocked off Virginia Tech squad. I'd ranked inside the top 15, 27-21 in Morgantown. And the Ears got it done on the strength of Letty Brown, rushed for 161 on 19, had an 80-yard dash, while the Mountaineer defense sacked Hokie quarterback Braxton Burmeister 6 times, like Trogdor, for some of y'all that know anything about Trogdor. Anyway, the Burminator, you get it. But when I look at this one, I think it's that I overrated Va Tech off the strength of their win against North Carolina. West Virginia committed 9 penalties for 67 yards against Va Tech, converted just 3 of 10 third downs, and turned the ball over just, twice, as if that's a small thing. Still, the facts are these. Number 3, Oklahoma gets a bunch of mountain men that knocked off a ranked Va Tech 27-21 today. And the Sooners look annoyingly shaky. Number 12, Notre Dame defeated Purdue 27-13 in South Bend. And to couple all that together, number 8, Cincy beat Indiana 38-24 in Bloomington. Desmond Ridder looked fine. He went 20 of 36 for 206 with a TD. 208 with a TD and a pick. But Michael Penix Jr., he was not fine. He was far from okay. He was 17 of 40 for 224 with 2 TDs and 3 INTs. Is Penix's second game with 3 picks in just 3 games? Like, giving him 6 this year? It's hard to win football games if your star quarterback insists on throwing the ball to the other team. That's what I'm saying. Back to Notre Dame. Notre Dame coach Brian Kelly tied Newt Rockne with his 105th win today. That's including the vacated victories with the victory against Purdue in South Bend. The Irish got 12 rushes for 91 yards out of Kyron Williams, including a marauding 51-yard run where he ran over half the defense en route to solidifying this 27-13 win to remain undefeated. Meanwhile, number 18 Wisconsin was on a bye this week. Means the Badgers have been loading up to bang on the Golden Domes for 2 weeks in Chicago next week, and then the Golden Domers getting undefeated and ranked Cincinnati on October 2nd. Again, off a bye. That four-leaf clover is about to get some serious work in South Bend. Number 20 Arkansas rolled to a 45-10 win against Georgia Southern. Razorback quarterback KJ Jefferson completed just 13 passes for 366 passing yards with 3 tutties against the Eagles. With the win, Arkansas joined Maryland, who beat Illinois on Friday, in starting the season 3-0 for the first time since the Obama administration. Shout out to you. The Razorbacks will play the biggest game they played against Texas A&M since beating the Farmers 42-38 in 2011 when they both were ranked inside the top 25 next week. Bobby Petrino famously coached the Razorbacks to an 11-win season and a number 3 ranking before losing to LSU on the road. Arkansas finished with a Cotton Bowl win against K-State and as the number 5 ranked team in All-America. That's on the table if Sam Pittman's Hogs can get past Fisher's Farmers. Hey kinfolk, I appreciate you for watching. Subscribe here and ring the bell so you don't miss the latest upload to the channel. Also, be sure to watch more videos here, like FS1 Studio shows and the best from Fox Sports and Fox Sports Digital.